When you think of upstate New York, you probably imagine quiet towns, endless forests, and peaceful lakes. But behind that calm beauty, there are places where the silence feels heavy, where every creak of the floor or whisper of the wind makes you wonder if you're truly alone. I've walked through some of these places myself, and trust me, the air feels different there, like it carries the weight of stories that were never meant to be told. In this part 2, we'll uncover 5 haunted places in upstate New York that will stay in your mind long after you hear them. If you enjoy exploring these chilling stories with me, make sure to subscribe so you never miss the next adventure. 1 Rolling Hills Asylum, East Bethany, NY. I remember the night I first stepped into Rolling Hills Asylum. The building itself felt alive, breathing with the weight of thousands of forgotten souls. The wind outside rattled the old windows, but inside, the silence pressed against my chest like something waiting to be broken. The hallway stretched ahead of me, long and narrow, with peeling paint and the faint smell of dampness clinging to the air. I held my flashlight tight, but it felt like no amount of light could ever cut through the heaviness that lived there. I had read about the asylum before, once a place for the poor, the sick, and the unwanted. More than 1,700 deaths had been recorded here, but standing in those hallways, it didn't feel like history. It felt present. As I walked deeper inside, I caught myself whispering, almost like I didn't want to disturb whatever lingered in those walls. Every step echoed too loudly, bouncing back at me as if the building wanted me to know I wasn't alone. The first real spike of fear came when I reached the infamous shadow hallway. People always say they see figures here, tall, darker than the dark itself. I tried convincing myself it was just stories, until my light flickered. In that split second of darkness, I saw it. A shape, taller than any man I had ever seen, standing at the far end. My chest tightened, my stomach dropped, and I swear every instinct in me screamed to run. But my legs froze. When the light came back, the hallway was empty. Empty, but I didn't feel alone. I pushed myself forward, my hand brushing the wall for balance. That's when I heard it, soft, dragging footsteps behind me. I spun around, but no one was there. The sound stopped when I stopped, like it was mocking me. My throat went dry, and I could feel the sweat cold on the back of my neck. I wasn't imagining it. Something was there. The worst moment, though, came in the morgue. The air was colder there, unnaturally so, like the room had never let go of the bodies it once held. I leaned down to look at one of the old gurneys, and for a second, I swear I felt a hand press lightly against my shoulder. Not hard, not threatening, just enough to let me know it was real. I spun around, heart racing, but I was alone. Or at least, I wanted to believe I was. When I finally stepped out of Rolling Hills into the night air, it felt like I had left a part of myself behind. The weight lifted, but a strange emptiness followed me. Even now, when I close my eyes, I can see that shadow at the end of the hallway, waiting, as if it still knows my name. To the Sagamore Resort, Bolton Landing, NY. The first time I walked into the Sagamore Resort, it didn't feel like a hotel. It felt like a place where time had been paused. The lake outside was calm, the wind barely moved the trees, but inside the grand halls, there was a heaviness that I couldn't explain. The chandeliers above sparkled beautifully, yet somehow their glow didn't feel warm. It felt distant, almost staged, like the building itself wanted to hide something behind the elegance. I had heard stories, guests seeing a little boy running down the halls, golfers spotting a child on the green who disappears the moment they call out. But standing there in the quiet, I didn't expect to feel it so strongly. I checked into my room, trying to shake off the unease, but the moment the door clicked shut, the silence pressed against me again. It was too quiet, like the walls were waiting. That night, I decided to explore. The corridors were dim, the old carpet muffling my steps. I swear I caught the faint sound of laughter echoing, the playful, innocent kind, but it came from nowhere. I froze, listening, and my heart began to pound because it wasn't fading. It was moving. It felt like something, or someone, was running just ahead of me, turning corners faster than I could follow. The strongest moment hit me in the stairwell. I was halfway down when I heard quick footsteps behind me. I turned, expecting another guest, but the stairs were empty. Before I could move, a rush of cold air brushed past me, hard enough to raise goosebumps on my arms. My flashlight shook in my hand as I scanned the steps, but there was nothing. Still, the sound of footsteps kept circling me up and down, until suddenly everything went silent again. That silence was worse than the noise. It felt like something was waiting for me to react. I thought I was imagining it all, until later that night, in my room. I had just turned off the light when the sound of a ball bouncing echoed across the floor. Slow at first, then faster. I shot up, heart racing, searching the dark, but the ball wasn't there. The sound stopped as suddenly as it started, leaving me staring into the emptiness, wide awake, knowing I wouldn't be sleeping again. When morning came, the sun filled the resort with light, and it looked harmless, almost beautiful. Guests were laughing, staff smiled politely, and the place felt normal again. But I knew what I had heard, what I had felt. The elegance of the Sagamore hides something restless, something that doesn't belong to daylight. Even now, I can still hear that bouncing ball in my head, each thud a reminder that not everything at the Sagamore Resort checks out when the sun goes down. 3 Durand Eastman Park, Rochester, NY. I went to Durand Eastman Park on a late autumn evening, when the sun had just dipped below the horizon and the sky turned into shades of gray and purple. The trees stood bare, their twisted branches scratching at the fading light like something restless. The locals had warned me about the White Lady, a spirit they say roams the park searching for her lost daughter. I wanted to believe it was just another ghost tale, but from the moment I stepped onto the path near the lake, it didn't feel like a story anymore. The air was colder than it should have been, and every sound carried too far. I could hear the crunch of leaves under my boots, but it felt like the sound was chasing me, echoing strangely. The deeper I walked, the heavier the silence became, until it felt like the whole park was holding its breath. I tried to laugh it off, but my voice sounded too thin, like it didn't belong in that place. It started with a soft rustling in the woods. I stopped, turned, and saw nothing but shadows. Then I noticed the smell, something faintly sweet, like old perfume drifting through the trees. My chest tightened because I knew I was alone, and yet that scent was so close, as if someone was standing just behind me. I spun around, my flashlight trembling in my hand, but the path was empty. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. As I reached the stone steps near the old castle-like structure in the park, I heard it, a woman sobbing. Soft at first, almost like the wind, but then clearer, more desperate. My heart started pounding. The sound was coming from ahead, echoing down the path, pulling me closer against every instinct that told me to run. When I reached the clearing, the sobbing stopped. The silence that followed was worse than the sound. And then I saw her. A figure in white, faint but unmistakable, drifting between the trees near the edge of the lake. She wasn't walking, she was gliding, her dress glowing faintly against the dark. My breath caught in my throat. She turned her head slowly, and though I couldn't see her face clearly, I felt her eyes lock onto me. A wave of sorrow and fear hit me so hard I stumbled back. The figure dissolved into the mist rising from the water, leaving only the echo of that perfume behind. I didn't wait to see more. I ran, branches clawing at my arms, my heart hammering so loudly it drowned out everything else. By the time I reached the edge of the park, I could still feel her presence, like she was following me just far enough to make sure I never forgot. Even now, when I think of Durand Eastman Park, I don't remember the beauty of the lake or the trees. I remember the perfume, the sobbing, and that pale figure in white who seemed to know I was there. For Fort Ontario, Oswego, NY. When I first stepped through the gates of Fort Ontario, I thought I was just walking into history. The stone wall stood strong against the wind coming off Lake Ontario, and for a moment, it felt like nothing more than an old military fort. But the silence inside those walls was different. It wasn't peaceful, it was the kind of silence that pressed against you like hundreds of voices had been swallowed by the air and were still waiting to be heard. The guide had left me near one of the barracks, and I decided to wander on my own. The corridors smelled of damp stone, and every step I took seemed to echo too loudly. I told myself it was just the age of the place, but the truth is, I already felt like I wasn't alone. In one of the empty rooms, I stopped to read an old plaque about soldiers who had died defending the fort. As I leaned closer, I heard it, a low murmur, like men whispering in another room. My heart jumped. I stepped back, scanning the corners, but there was no one there. The whispers grew clearer, almost like orders being barked, and then suddenly, silence. The kind of silence that makes your skin crawl because you know something was just there. I tried to shake it off and walked toward the underground tunnels. The air grew colder with every step, and my flashlight beam seemed weaker in the darkness. Halfway down, I heard boots. Heavy boots, striking stone floors in rhythm, coming closer and closer. I pressed my back against the wall, holding my breath, convinced someone was marching straight toward me. But when the sound reached me, there was nothing, no soldier, no figure, only the empty tunnel stretching out on both sides. My chest tightened, and I could feel sweat trickling down my back despite the cold. The worst moment came when I reached the old casemates. I bent down to look at a rusted cannon when suddenly I felt the air shift, heavy and electric. A shadow moved across the wall, slow and deliberate, like a man standing guard. I froze, unable to move, my breath caught in my throat. The shadow lingered for several seconds before melting into the darkness, leaving me trembling. I swear I felt eyes on me even after it was gone. By the time I stepped back into the open courtyard, the fresh air of the lake felt unreal, like I had been holding my breath the entire time inside. The fort looked calm again, just stone walls and history, but I knew what I had heard, what I had seen. Fort Ontario isn't just a relic of the past, it's alive with those who never left. Even now, when I think back, I can still hear those heavy boots striking the stone, coming closer, step by step, as if the soldiers are still guarding their post. 5 Dr. Best House and Medical Exhibit, Middleborough, NY. ChatGPT said. I remember stepping into the Firkins house at Fort Edmonton Park on a chilly autumn evening. The air was already heavy with that strange mix of wood and dust, the kind of scent that instantly tells you this place has been standing for over a century. At first glance, the house looked like any other preserved building in a historic park. But the silence inside was different, unnatural, as though the walls were holding back whispers. The moment I closed the door behind me, I felt it. A shift. Like the room had noticed me. The creak of the wooden floorboards followed my every step, almost in rhythm with my heartbeat. I told myself it was just old wood, but deep down, I couldn't shake the thought that someone, or something, was matching my pace. I reached the parlor and sat in one of the old wooden chairs. That's when the temperature dropped sharply. My breath became visible, though outside it wasn't nearly that cold. I rubbed my arms, trying to shake the chill, but then I heard it. A faint, dragging sound from the hallway. My first instinct was to assume another visitor had entered, but the door was still firmly shut behind me. I stood, frozen in place, listening as the sound grew closer. It wasn't footsteps, it was softer, slower, like fabric brushing against the floor. My pulse quickened, and every instinct screamed at me to leave. But I couldn't move. Something about the house made it feel like the walls were closing in, urging me to stay. Suddenly, the door to the dining room slammed shut on its own. The echo bounced through the house, making my stomach drop. I rushed toward it, yanking it open, only to find the room completely empty. The chairs were neatly tucked in, the table set as though awaiting a family meal. But I swear the smell of fresh bread and roasted meat lingered in the air, as if the house was replaying a memory from a time long gone. Just as I turned back toward the hallway, I caught it in the corner of my eye, a figure. Not solid, but a faint outline of a woman standing near the staircase. She didn't move, didn't speak, just stood there, her head slightly tilted as if she was studying me. My throat went dry. I wanted to ask, "Who are you?" but no sound left my mouth. And before I could blink, she was gone. I didn't run, though every part of me wanted to. Instead, I slowly backed toward the exit, feeling her presence trailing behind me until I stepped outside into the crisp evening air. The noises stopped. The warmth returned. The world felt normal again. Even now, when I think about that moment, I can't explain it. But I know what I felt, what I saw. The Firkins house isn't just another old building. It's alive in a way that no living house should be. And once you step inside, you carry a piece of it with you, whether you want to or not.